Here's another show you can enjoy in the True Story FM family of entertainment podcasts.
Well, howdy, folks. My name is Lester Ryan Clark.
And I'm Keenan Diaz.
And we're the hosts of The Exorcist Minute, a show where we examine, extrapolate, and excavate the scariest movie of all time.
Each episode covers a single minute of William Friedkin's 1973 horror masterpiece, The Exorcist.
If you like deep dives, this show is the deepest.
Did you know the film's iconic theme song, Tubular Bells, wasn't written specifically for the movie?
Or that the 1973 audience members were throwing up and fainting in the theater before they ever got a glimpse of the demon?
Or what about all the crazy on-set mishaps, cast injuries, the director firing real guns?
Ooh. Ever wonder where Ouija boards came from or how they got their name? How about some history on the Catholic Church or the Roman rite of exorcism? Or maybe we can tempt you with some juicy demonology lore. Did you know that Pazuzu had an ex-wife? Find The Exorcist Minute on iTunes or Spotify or wherever you listen to your shows or at theexorcistminute.com. Until next time, folks,
the power of The Exorcist compels you.
I'm Pete Wright.
And I'm Andy Nelson.
Welcome to the next reel. When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny is over. Archimedes didn't know about continental drift.
Hitler made mistakes, and with this, I will correct them all.
You stole it.
Then you stole it.
And then I stole it. It's called capitalism.
Fasten your seatbelt. There might be some turbulence.
You've taken your chances, made your mistakes, and now a final triumph.
Indy! Give him hell, Indiana Jones! A few times in my life I've seen things. I've been tortured with voodoo. Been shot 9 times, including once by your father. Sorry! But I've been looking for this all my life.
Before we get started, I'd like to welcome you to our new segment, Never Too Old for Adventure. Harrison Ford was 80 years old when he donned the fedora and bullwhip for this installment of Indy. Too old? Some say yes. I say fie on those people. Instead, I'm celebrating the incredible feats of some of the world's oldest adventurers, individuals who prove that age is just a number when it comes to pushing the boundaries of human endurance, achievement, and spirit. Take Dale Sanders, for example, at 87 years young. He's not your average retiree. Sanders has set multiple records, including being the oldest person to canoe the entire Mississippi River at 85 while still being able to spell it, hike the Appalachian Trail at 82 while also spelling that, and complete the Florida National Scenic Trail at 81. His secret? Seeing these adventures as his fountain of youth. Then there's Yuichiro Miura. At 80 years old, became the oldest person to summit Mount Everest in 2013. That's right, the world's highest peak. But this wasn't just a one-time thing for Miura. He had already conquered Everest twice before at 70 and 75. And if that wasn't enough, he also skied down the highest mountains on all 7 continents. Miura gives new meaning to the phrase, peak performance. And let's not forget Sister Madonna Buder, a.k.a. the Iron Nun. At 82, she became the oldest woman to complete an Ironman triathlon in 2012, just one of her over 360 triathlons. Sister Madonna continues to inspire us with her endurance and unwavering faith in what the human body and spirit can achieve. And finally, imagine standing atop a plane, flying at 1,500 feet and 90 miles per hour. Sound terrifying? Not for Tom Lackey. This daredevil set multiple wing-walking records in his 90s, including a 26-mile feat on his 94th birthday, despite being wheelchair-bound. Lackey continued defying expectations until he passed away at 96 from conditions entirely unrelated to gravity. Do you want to join the ranks of these extraordinary adventurers? Whether you're 85 or 25, you can take a page from this playbook and embrace life's adventures with your own membership to the Next Reel family of film podcasts. For just $5 per month or $55 per year, you'll be flying high with your own personal podcast feed, giving you access to special member-only bonus episodes, early and extended editions of nearly every show, and access to the double secret channels in our Discord member community. You'll be able to join us for tales of cinematic achievement live as we record our episodes and chat right along with our daring hosts. And, most importantly, you'll be able to go home at the end of your own adventures and sleep soundly knowing that you're helping these weary, independent creators to keep boots on their feet, stew in their kettles, and microphones in their mouths. Visit truestory.fm/join to join the team today. It's never too late for adventure. And now, back to the movie.
All right, Pete. So, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny.
Here we are.
Fifth film in this franchise that kicked off this show back in 2011 with Raiders of the Lost Ark. Here we are finally coming back to this. Does it feel like home? Do you feel like you're back?
It does. It does. I have to say, maybe that's a controversial opinion. We'll see. But yeah, I'm going to say this out loud right now. It feels pretty good.
Okay. That's where we're kicking things off.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, let's take it from there. So, actually, before we start, I want to get these sorts of things out of the way because I think it's funny. We did all 4 films as the first 4 episodes of our show.
Mm-hmm.
And then for our 10th anniversary, we did Raiders of the Lost Ark Revisited.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I talked about there, I had put together a list of all of the people, like connections of all 4 films. And I said, okay, these are the few people who have actually been involved in Raiders of the Lost Ark, Temple of Doom, Last Crusade, Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. I've updated that list to now include this film because it's a different director. Which also means potentially different groups of people coming on board. And so let's see where we land, okay?
I would love to.
All right, first up, Steven Spielberg.
Okay, he's technically involved.
He was director of the first 4 films. In Temple, he also played uncredited a tourist at the airport. And yes, you're correct. He still is an executive producer here.
Right. James Mangold is not. He's just hasn't been involved.
Exactly. George Lucas was involved in the story for the first 4 films, the characters for the 3rd and 4th films, executive producer of all 5 films, and characters for Crusade, Crystal Skull, and Dial of Destiny. I don't know why he didn't get a characters based on characters created by credit in the second film. I'm not sure. He also had uncredited involvement in the first 3 films. But for this one, just executive producer and based on characters created by.
Okay.
Harrison Ford. I think it's a no-brainer. Yes, he's been involved in all 5 films.
Can I take it back up? Can I take it back up? What the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles was Spielberg, Lucas, were they involved in any of that?
I don't know. I was only looking at the films.
All right.
Yeah. I believe Lucas was, because I'm pretty sure they're all Lucasfilm. I don't know if Spielberg might have been on as an executive producer or something. I'm not sure.
Okay.
We had Ted Grossman on board for Raiders of the Lost Ark. He played the Peruvian porter. He was stunts on Temple of Doom. He played the deputy sheriff on Last Crusade. And again, he was a Peruvian porter and doing stunts in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. He sadly does not get a chance to return to this film. Ted Grossman, our first one, X'd off the list.
Oh,
I know.
That's a series wrap for Ted Grossman.
Exactly. Frank Marshall. He was a producer, second unit director, uncredited, and the pilot in the first film, and then has been an executive producer or various other things, second unit director, second assistant director on the second and third films. The 4th film, he was producer, and on this one, he also continued as producer.
Okay. Outstanding.
John Williams.
Yes.
Still conducting music and writing music and all 5 films. Michael Kahn edited the first 4 films. He's the second on our list who gets crossed off.
Oh, series wrap.
Yeah, series wrap on Michael Kahn.
Okay.
This is one of those ones where directors work with particular editors, cinematographers, and I just think James Mangold went with his own guy.
Yeah.
After that, Ben Burt, sound designer for the first 4 films, but he did not work on this film.
Okay.
Then we have Paul Houston, who is a model maker at ILM, and then for Raiders, chief model maker for the second film, Matt, model artist for the third film, and he was a digital artist at ILM for the fourth film. He did not get to work on this film. So there's another one to check off the list. And last but not least, you may or may not recall that there was one more person who was involved, and that was Jane Bay. She was the assistant to Mr. Lucas on the first 3 films. On the fourth film, she was the executive assistant of Mr. Lucas. Well, since his role has diminished, she sadly is the last one crossed off our list. No more Jane Bay on this film, yeah.
Oh.
Sad but true. That's where we are with things.
That is very sad.
Yeah.
I am sad to hear it.
Now, I have one more thing, if you'd like to participate in one other little thing. Thinking about this film and the mix of Indiana Jones timelines over the history of the franchise, do you think you could put in order, just from the films, all of the pieces of Indiana Jones chronologically?
Probably not. Let's be honest. Probably not. That's a leading question to embarrass me, and I understand what you're going for. The answer is probably not. I could try, but it'd be tough.
Well, what would you say is the earliest period of time we've seen in Indiana Jones film?
Probably the River Phoenix era.
Well, there's something in this film.
No, it's Archimedes.
It's Archimedes
now.
Yes.
Yeah.
214 BC is the earliest period of time in the Indiana Jones timeline. And then, next, it's not in the films, but in 1899, Indiana Jones is born.
Well, you set the rules as being from the films, and then you immediately give me a data point that's from outside the film. This is the kind of betrayal that sometimes your games lead to. I just want to call that out on the flag on the field.
I said this is not in the films. I said I'm just letting you know because it's just contextual, so we can see how old he is over time.
Okay. All right,
1912. You're correct. The next thing where we actually see the character Indiana Jones in his actual life is River Phoenix in Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. That is 1912. So he's 13-year-old. River Phoenix, 13-year-old boy. Maybe not.
Yeah,
anyway,
rough.
That's how old he's meant to be in that.
Okay.
What would be next?
Is there a part before the first movie?
Well, there's a movie before the first movie, as you may recall.
No, apparently I don't. Which movie was before the first movie?
Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom takes place in 1935.
Oh.
Raiders of the Lost Ark takes place in 1936.
Yeah, right.
So those two are the next. And then in 1938, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade takes place.
Mm-hmm. And then Crystal Skull?
Not yet.
Okay.
There's something from this film.
Oh, yeah. Indiana Jones, The Dial of Destiny, right? We get the opening sequence.
The opening sequence,
You should have stayed out of Poland.
The whole Nazi train sequence takes place next. That's 1944. And then there's another flashback in this film from 1951.
Okay.
It's when he goes back to Toby's house and takes the Dial of Destiny from him. That's when he sees Helena as a 12-year-old.
Yeah.
Right?
That's right. And he comes storming out and tells her, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
That's 1951. Then we have Crystal Skull, which is 1957. And last but not least, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, 1969. So 1899, that means he is 70 years old and he's played by what, 80-year-old Harrison Ford?
80-year-old, yeah, Harrison Ford.
So he's looking old for a 70-year-old.
Well, not in that opening party, he sure ain't.
Yeah, well, right.
Had a little work done, as they say.
Exactly. So anyway, just wanted to walk through that just to kind of, just contextualize all of these films as we're talking about them.
Yes, I think that's very useful. Now, I wanted to look for how old River Phoenix was when he did.
When he played 13-year-old.
When he played 13. And I can tell you exactly. I want to shout out to the app Call Sheet and Casey Liss, because Call Sheet has a feature where when you look at the cast list on a movie, it tells you how old the actor was when they played that part. And so I can tell you right now that Harrison Ford was 46 when he made The Last Crusade. Sean Connery was 58.
So he was 46 playing a 39-year-old.
Yes. And River Phoenix was 18 playing a 13-year-old.
That's really funny.
Alison Doody, who was the romantic interest, Elsa Schneider, was 22.
Oh, Harrison.
Oh, wow.
My goodness.
Well, she didn't look 22.
No, she looked 25.
25? No, she was in her 30s.
All right. All right.
You're that's lunacy. 22.
Okay, fine.
Okay. When do we get to make the case? What do you think of the movie? When are you going to tell me?
Initial thoughts? Is that what we're doing now? I enjoy this film. I don't love this film. And it's interesting because this, for me, is a film that it's tricky. This is really tricky because I feel like there is this level with wanting to kind of continue it's not really continuing a story thread. This isn't like a legacy sequel type of thing like Blade Runner 2049, which is really kind of taking the story and moving it along. This is just another adventure for Indiana Jones, really, right? I mean, that's kind of what the film is. And while I think it's done well, I think all of the set pieces are fun and they all work for me. I also can't help but feel as I watch it that maybe they needed to let go of the reins a little bit of feeling like they needed to have as many callbacks as they do, play with all of the same tropes. Like, could they have done something a little different just to make it feel different? Because there is an element to it that just feels tired to me. Like, it just feels like I've seen this 4 other times. It's Indiana Jones on a mission and not much is changing. And I don't know, is there something to perhaps like what the James Bond franchise has done where they change the actors up and they kind of change some of the stories? I mean, James Bond is another one where the stories feel very much the same, but every time they're changing the actors, at least it's feeling like they're doing something different. And like with Daniel Craig, it felt like they were updating it and like changing it in different ways. And I don't know if that's something that would make sense for this franchise, but I did feel by the time I got to this one, I'm like, okay. I mean, I feel like they're just playing with all the same sand in the sandbox and the sand is getting dirty. I don't know, it's a terrible metaphor.
I can see that. I really, and I'll concede it. I think that is, that's a fair point. I just have a hard time imagining that Indiana Jones will continue in any way, shape, or form after this movie, because Harrison Ford is not going to be Indiana Jones after this movie, right? That would be ridiculous.
No, and everybody's pretty much said as much. And,
yeah.
You know, well, I don't know if there's contractual sorts of things, but I mean, Harrison Ford has said, when I die, Indiana Jones dies. Yes. Like, he has verbally said things like that. So it's like, is that actually written in contract somewhere? Or is Disney going to say, screw it, once he's dead, let's go to town?
Yeah, right. Digital Harrison Ford. I get that. I just don't think it's going to be an apt comparison to parallel this with James Bond, right? Maybe we could tie it to Star Wars, right? Maybe it's going to be a thing where, like, your opening quiz of doing, of looking at timelines, like maybe it's a thing where we're able to recast because we're looking at Indiana Jones at other points in his life and have much, much younger actors. Like young Indiana Jones was a stab at that, maybe. But I really think this is done. I don't think it's going to be an adult Indiana Jones ever again. It just never felt like that kind of a thing. This felt like a comic book on screen that was of a piece. Like, it's just a thing. It's an element that exists. And these 5 movies now make up this whole thing. And there are parts of it that aren't as entertaining and fun and good, and parts of it that are. But this felt like a continuation of exactly what I'd already seen. And I was okay with that because I enjoyed what I'd already seen. It felt closer to the first 3 movies in a way that I thought was satisfying. In terms of the adventure, in terms of pulling me out of my head as an adult, as a critical person of these movies, the way I was with Crystal Skull. And just, I felt like it allowed me to have some fun. I thought it was fun and funny, and it romped right along. The pace was good. It was an able addition to the franchise.
Oh, I agree with that. I mean, it fits very perfectly in with all of the rest of the films. In fact, you could argue some capacity better than Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
Oh, much better. I just have to say that. Much better than Crystal Skull.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think the fact that James Mangold, when he came on board as the director and started working on the scripts, his notes were like, Raiders of the Lost Ark is the film to pattern after. It's my favorite film of the franchise. It's the one that set the bar. That's the tone I want to go for. And we've talked about this on way back when with our other conversations, that Raiders is the one that actually feels the most different of the franchise up to this point, because Temple of Doom, Last Crusade, and Crystal Skull all have a little bit more goofiness going on in them, right? There's just some goofy antics with the way that they're performing the different chase scenes and everything. And Raiders, while fun and certainly has some laughs during some of the chase scenes, never feels like it's turning into anything goofy. And I think that was the difference that I don't think I ever noticed until we did that series way back in 2011, of just how different those other four films, or the other three films, felt from this. And this film is the first film that actually feels like it's gone back in tone to Raiders. So exactly what James Mangold set out to do. Like, this film feels like that same type of excitement and adventure that we're having.
Oh, definitely made by a fan. That is absolutely true for me too. I think that's really true. But I would suggest that we go back and think about the Temple of Doom, which was, as we discussed back in 2011, a darker movie in just about every way. There was maybe some goofiness with Short Round. Like, I think that was part of it. But when I think about that movie, I don't think goofy. In fact, the Raiders laundry basket scene with the da 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 da, that whole scene is about as goofy as it's peak goofy for the series.
I wouldn't say it's peak goofy.
Peak goofy. I just said peak goofy. Twice.
In Temple of Doom, you've got the entire dinner scene, which is incredibly goofy with the chilled monkey brain. Like, basically anything that you have with Willie Scott.
Oh my gosh. That's not goofy. Are you kidding me?
No,
it's chilled monkey brains and the snakes?
It's all goofy comedy. Like, and I'm not saying it in a bad way. I enjoy it. I think it's very funny. All of the stuff with just like when she's waiting for him and she's fuming in her room and he's trying to answer the door, but the guy's there. Like, there's just some goofiness to some of the action scenes and stuff. Yes, that film goes darkest of all of the franchise, 100%. I don't disagree with that. I'm just saying, in the scope of a lot of the other elements, like Willie Scott with the elephant trunk around her neck, and then finally it's a snake and she's like, "You stupid elephant," like, there's a lot of stuff in it that is still fairly goofy. And Raiders, just, while yes, the basket scene is fun and antic, I just don't think I wouldn't say it's peak goofy.
I would say, if we're going to separate, if there's going to be a line drawn between antic and goofy, then maybe we can have this conversation. I think part of the jarring element of Temple of Doom, if we're going to just litigate a little bit of that, is that it's hard to come after Karen Allen and meet Kate Capshaw, because they are so fundamentally different characters, not just performers, right? They are written so differently. Karen Allen is so able and strong and badass, and Kate Capshaw is written as a kind of hopeless rube in Temple of Doom and the thing that needs rescuing. And you never get that from Karen Allen. So for people who have this relationship between these two people, Indy and Marion, and then we go to Indy and Kate Capshaw, it's like there's no contest. This is a different movie, right? I totally get that. But this leads to actually one of the things that I wanted to get to about this movie versus Crystal Skull. Crystal Skull, we get aliens, right? And that doesn't work for me at all. And somehow Mangold is able to do time travel through the clouds, and I don't have a problem with it. Why is that?
It's interesting because, I mean, there was complaint about the time travel element that Mangold brought into this franchise. But he said, in fact, I can probably find the quote that he said because I thought it was interesting. He said, it's no more of a wild swing in my mind than ghouls flying out of a box and melting people's heads through the sheer power of dark angels, or a 700-year-old knight existing in a cave for perpetuity. These are all beyond the scope of all physical belief. And I think that made sense. Like, in the scope of all of the stuff that we've seen in this franchise, it's like, if you can go along with what you're seeing in the first film, it's like, you may as well just buy into all the rest of it. Like, there's nothing that makes any of it any different than any of the other nonsensical, crazy stuff that we're witnessing.
That's a really good point. And to the extent that you maybe connect with it might be the extent to which you are spiritual or religious in the first movie, based in like a belief in crazy rituals in the second movie, and I don't know, cardiac events, a belief in aliens in the fourth movie, right? Like belief in again, religious in the third movie. There's a lot of religion. If you deeply believe in the literality of all of those conceits, then you may connect with these movies better, or maybe they don't live up to what's in your head and you don't. But I think that's really interesting that they all kind of live up to, maybe you could say, the same level of disbelief across all five movies. And I buy that. And I think maybe because we are so deep into the multiverse era of fantastical filmmaking, time travel isn't that far afield from what we would expect.
That's actually a really strong point, and I'm glad you said it. If Spielberg and Lucas had done time travel for the second film, would it have been an easier buy because it was done when we were fresh with the franchise and we just saw the crazy stuff with the Ark of the Covenant, and now we're buying into this? But because we're where we are today, where we've got multiverses, we've got constant time travel in films all over the place, time travel, dimension travel, does that mean that it's easier to disregard as anything serious?
Yes. And James Mangold handled the time travel with, I think, deft kit gloves, right? It is a tiny fraction of this movie. Does the Archimedes device succeed? Yes. Do they go back in time? Yes. Does the antagonist die, and do we get back to the main timeline immediately? Yes. There is nothing in here that talks about, that risks massive universe-changing, rifts in time because our protagonist actually pokes the wrong butterfly on a wooden path. We dance with it a little bit and then we come back out. And I think maybe that's another thing that I appreciate about the movie, is that he didn't lean so heavily in on the fantastical. Instead, it's a movie about aging and nostalgia and all of these things that I see in Indy now as an 80-year-old guy or 70-year-old Indiana Jones that I relate to as the 50-year-old guy who grew up with Indiana Jones.
Well, and yeah, I definitely want to talk about that. I just want to jump back to the time travel element real quick, because I think that in the scope of nonsense time travel, I think what James Mangold actually did here was kind of smart time travel by crafting it where, in the scope of Archimedes crafting this Antikythera that could bring them back in time, it works, it does it once. And the way that it does it involves all of the characters the way that they were, in a way that allowed for no change in the timeline to basically happen, because it had always happened, right? Archimedes, saw it. There was a carving of it on his tomb. There was the watch that, he had that conversation with Indiana Jones. There was always that element in Archimedes' timeline now, just for whatever that 20-minute window, whatever it is, that allowed for us to get to the closure of it in 1969. And I think that's it's not something where, now people are going to be jumping through time all over the place. It's that one instance where it happens, and that will be it with this device. And so I thought that was a smart way to encompass it.
I 100% agree with that. 100%. I think it was really smart. And it was the fact that Archimedes built a device to only bring people back to his time, right? That was just really smart. It was smart. It was smart writing and really gentle dance with fantastical.
Yeah. Going back to the age thing, and we're at this point where we're talking about all the things that I really do like about this film. The age element, dealing with this story of Indiana Jones recognizing that he is getting older, it's harder to do these things. He's not really interested in getting involved in this. He only does it because it's personal, because Helena, his goddaughter, is essentially a terrible person, and essentially, like, she's the equivalent of Nicolas Cage in Lord of War, right? She is essentially like basically an arms dealer. I don't care about anything else, I just want to make money.
But she has a very high opinion of herself, which is exactly like Nicolas Cage.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a great parallel.
She is that person, and so he has to stop her. And at the same time, like, these people have invaded his own life. They've killed people at his office, which actually had quite more gravitas than I was expecting in the way that played. I really enjoyed that whole sequence. And then you build to, and this is again going back to the time travel element and the way that Mangold chose to have the script crafted. I know initially they had talked about the time travel being Voller, Mickelson's character, going back to World War II to make sure that they won. Like, that was the initial plan, and it is kind of the plan here. But it was going to actually take place, and Indiana Jones would stop him. But Mangold recognized, well, there's nothing in it for Indiana Jones. Like, there's no personal stakes for him, and he realized that by going back to the time of Archimedes, that allowed Indiana Jones to have more of a personal connection with this period that he was actually really interested in. And that whole battle that he has at the end with Helena about, I want to stay here, let me stay, all the way to the point where he has to go, she takes him back to the present, and that whole recognition that he has to be in the present. And then all of the actual personal closure that he has with Marion, which this is the way that I think, I mean, it was nice having the wedding and all at the end of Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, but this actually made for me a much more powerful ending with those characters.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that because this movie, I think, was driven more by where those characters were in their lives. And I think, the interesting dance between Indiana Jones's motivation is that he was surly, right? We get this sort of melancholic depiction of Indiana Jones in the beginning of the contemporary part of the movie, which is in such stark contrast to 1944. But we get the fact that he's almost sort of given up. It's retirement day, like he's just kind of sad. He makes a quip at the party, but he's really, you can see his heart's not in it. He's sort of lost some things. So this family connection that comes back, you can see he's sort of motivated by that, but he's also motivated by the fact that he's living in a body that feels like it's lost to time already. Like there's nothing left for him. So there's a solid and believable push in this movie when the baddies come into the school and start killing people, for him to both be, curious about what comes next, protective of history, and probably connected to this family thing. But that is tertiary maybe to the act of regaining some agency as an old man. And that's huge, right? That's a huge thing, to feel useful, to feel of purpose in the world. And that's what, to me, that's so much of what this movie is about subtextually, but it doesn't linger in it so long that you're allowed to forget it's an Indiana Jones adventure, which is that's the sleight of hand of the movie to me. I think it's great.
Well, and I think there's also, he's harboring some guilt as to being responsible for what's happened, because per his buddy's recommendation, you need to destroy this, as Basil says, and then he doesn't, right? Yeah, and it's on him, and so he feels now responsible. Like, I have to go out and stop this. And to your point, that's essentially the inciting incident to get Indiana Jones back into the adventure.
Fedora.
Yeah.
Okay. You want to run through some cast moments, or do you want to start quibbling? Do you want to talk about the things you don't like?
Well, I want to talk through elements that they've done callbacks with over the course of the film and just gauge, like, is it working? Is it too much? Are we happy these are here? Like, where do we stand with all of these, right? So, I mean, do you have any particular things that you feel work or don't work for you as far as, like, callbacks from past films?
Gun whip in the conference room.
Oh, okay. And when he pulls out his whip and cracks it, and then suddenly
they all pull guns.
And are you saying that works for you, or?
It works for me. It's a moment of comedy. I'll tell you, watching this movie, I think you might be surprised at how much I forgive because of the general mindset I was in when I watched this movie. I watched it, I felt like I was, 13 again.
Yeah. I know. I mean, I don't mind that one. I think that one's okay.
Okay. So give me one that doesn't work for you, and let's test my theory.
Well, I'm gonna first give you one that I do think actually works well, and I think it's because of character motivations, and it's the reversal of the moment between Indy and Marion in that final conversation. It doesn't hurt here. It doesn't hurt here. Like that to me was like a perfect way to bring that back into something that was incredibly touching. And watching these two characters find that reconnection after kind of having a breakup after the death of Mutt.
Totally agree.
So that one works.
Okay. Give me one that doesn't. Puts you on the spot, right? Because now you're going to be hurting my heart when you say something you don't like.
I don't know. I think in some capacity, it's a lot of it boils down to just the sense that it's doing a lot of the same things. We're back with the Nazis again at the start of the film as we have that whole conflict, and we're kind of going through that whole thing, and all of his just kind of the Indiana Jones-isms of his jumping on the train and all of that. Like I think that I think it's fine. I think it's fun, but I also, there was this point where I was just like, I feel like we've had a lot of Indiana Jones and the Nazis over the course of this franchise.
Okay. What if you were to pivot and say that Indiana Jones as a franchise is a story of an archaeologist adventurer and his never-ending battle against the Nazis?
Well, yeah, but I guess if that were the case, we should have had Nazis in every film. Right?
Yeah.
That's, I think, the thing. And I felt like when James Mangold crafted this, he's just like, I want to pull all of the things that were so great about Raiders, and that includes the Nazis. Because a film in 1969, we didn't have to start in 1944 with the Nazis. We didn't have to have Voller as a Nazi character. He could have had a totally different motivation, but he chose to specifically do the Nazi callback.
Well, and I think the Nazi callback works as a comic book foil, right? Because we know Indiana Jones fighting Nazis is something that we've done. He's succeeded at before. He can succeed again, even though it's going to be hard. Who else do you put him against in 1969? White supremacists?
Honestly, the fact that Helena is this grifter character who's trying to sell. She doesn't care about the history of these articles, of these items. It's all for her about the money that she can get from it. That to me is actually a really interesting thing. Like, give us kind of a Lord of War scenario where he's up against these people,
organized crime and thugs,
and just people who are all about taking these incredible articles of history and using them for ill-gotten gains.
Yeah, I can understand that point. I do think there is strength to the symbol of the Nazi march toward science and cultural mastery. And the fact that that still exists in the 1969 mind of Voller as he is, continuing his campaign to master science on behalf of the Reich is, I think, an interesting thing. And it's the same. I think part of the reason it works is because that callback between these two men, Voller's living the same kind of experience as Indiana Jones, right? He's like been forced out of this shell. He's been forced to hide. He is less of a man than he was when he was at the height of his power in his culture. And he wants to regain that power and authority. He wants to change history so that he can thrive. And Indiana Jones wants to thrive too. And so I think that parallel for me works. I totally understand what you're saying, but I think the symbolism of the Nazis is sort of earned reputational credit that allows us to jump into Indiana's mindset faster than having to teach us about the world of organized art crime.
No, and I mean, I get it. And again, these aren't huge points. They're not like major, like I don't not like the film because of these, but I did feel like, oh, okay, we're, this is the trope we're in.
Obligatory Nazi scene.
Yeah. Likewise, I really enjoy Phoebe Waller-Bridge as Helena, as the character that he's working with and against over the course of the film. Like, that plays really well for me. I like that relationship. but there is also the need to throw in a kid character. And I was like, okay, this is the callback to the short round. And I enjoy the kid and the relationship that she has as a character with this kid, but I couldn't help but feel like there was so much of this callback to short round. And, he's driving this little tuk-tuk just like short round was driving the car. Like we're kind of repeating a lot of those sorts of elements.
Yeah, I think, I saw it too. And just as a symbol of how I approached the movie, it was very much like, oh, we're playing the hits. Why are they hits? They worked. I laughed. I like him driving the tuk-tuk. It's fun. It was an action-y car chase in unreliable vehicles.
No, again, and see, that's the thing that I think, that's the line that I'm always on with this film is like, I enjoy all of those bits. I enjoy the hits, but at the same time, I also feel like I've heard all of these before. And that's why I say it feels a little tired to me, because it's like, I can enjoy it. I mean, I do enjoy this film. I have a fun time watching it from beginning to end. I don't actively dislike any of these things that I'm talking about, but I'm just saying that they feel like elements that, like, could they have found a way into this story without having to play those hits? Would it have still worked? And I don't know. But I mean, I do feel like that's one of those things. And it's funny because sometimes I hear people talk about James Mangold as a director for dad movies. So some of me is like,
I am in his sweet spot.
Well, yeah, but that's the thing. You look at all of his movies and I'm like, well, okay, I guess that's hard to argue. And this film feels like my kids had zero interest in going to this in the movie theater. And I just don't know if it was made for younger audiences. I feel like this film was kind of the way that you enjoy it. I feel like you have to really be somebody who kind of grew up and enjoy that Indiana Jones character to actually find a connection with this.
Right. I think you're exactly right. I think he made this movie for Raiders of the Lost Ark audiences.
Yeah. Which are us and older.
That's who he made it. It's like a gift to us. As loath as I am often to come to your defense in this situation, I do think you have a point. And it's important to recognize that when a director is coming back to play the hits, I don't think if the hits worked for you completely, you would be complaining about them as hits, right? Like that, it's completely fair to say, this is now not a hit anymore. It's a trope. Like it's gone too far. The fact that I even notice that I'm in a hit being played in front of me is a sign of weakness. And I want to acknowledge that because I think that's fair. I think it's fair for the discussion that I'll even acknowledge that the fact that I noticed that we were essentially playing a greatest hits of Raiders, I noticed that's not great. Like I want to be in a movie where I don't notice, where even playing the hits feels original. And that's a fair criticism.
Well, it's definitely a point. And I imagine that's another element in, especially after how it did at the box office and everything, that they may not find the reason to come calling back to continue this in any capacity.
And maybe it's because, Saga didn't have a big enough role, even as he's standing on the street begging Indiana Jones to be in the rest of the movie. Yeah, right? Indy, please let me be in the rest of the movie. Please.
All right. Well, speaking of him, were there other, what about the rest of the cast? Anyone else stand out for you?
Oh, I think the rest of the cast actually worked really well. It's fun to see Karen Allen back in such a small role at the very end. She just felt very lived in 1969. Like they felt like a good couple back together again at the end of this movie. It was nice to come home to that.
Yeah. Smartly used. Like we didn't need her on the whole adventure like we had in Crystal Skull, which was definitely too much for me. I liked that bit.
And Mads, right? Mads.
I mean, when do we go wrong with Mads Mikkelsen in
right?
something?
Like, This is just like immediate earned credibility for Mads Mikkelsen, right? He's just a great nemesis.
Who did you buy easier in de-aging, him or Harrison?
That's tricky. Probably him. But honestly, I was able to let go of the de-aging pretty quickly. That's one of the things, because I think I saw this movie with de-aging in mind, and I was looking hard for it.
Well, it's in the trailer too, yeah.
Yeah, right, and hypercritical of it the first time I saw this movie. And this time, I think I had already ripped that Band-Aid off, so I was like, okay, there's going to be a lot of technology telling a story across time, and people's faces are going to look funny, and it's fine. And I let go of it. I was just fine.
I was fine with the de-aging didn't bother me too much for either of them. It's easier to look at with Mads. I don't think they had to do as much with him. Harrison, I think it's because Harrison is an older man, and so sometimes I think they have a harder time putting the younger face on him, much like Irishman, I think that was one of the things. I think the hardest I had was some of the rough CG that they did, mostly in the train sequence, but some of it is throughout the film. But like there's a shot of where Indiana Jones first climbs up on top of the train and then runs across the top. And it just doesn't even look like a person. It just looks like a little video game character, like running on a train. Like it just is, it's such terrible CGI at that one shot. But I see stuff like that throughout.
I want to amplify that comment because I think all of the train stuff operates outside of the elements of physics. And that's a problem with some of the CGI stuff because it felt like they were in a green room shooting these actors, not like they were on a train. And some movies, you get a real sense of environment. You get a lot of heavy wind. You get the fact that they can't stand up straight on the top of a train while it's moving at however many miles an hour. And this movie seemed ignorant of that level of physics in too many places. And so that's a quibble that I share.
Okay. Gotcha.
But the de-aging, honestly, is not one of them. I was able to let go of that pretty quickly. Good, bad, indifferent. I was in it for the character.
Yeah, I hit that point this second go around with it, or I'm like, it's a thing, but I'm okay with it.
Yeah, for sure. Antonio Banderas.
Frogman. I love that we're getting a call back to, I feel like I've heard that term, but then last season to watch the movie The Frogman, and here we are talking about, he's the best frogman I know. And of course, seeing Banderas in it. I loved his part of the film. That was another one that it felt kind of like a callback to Raiders when he's like, his friend who's the boat captain, who helps him out and just tapping into those sorts of things. But I enjoyed that sequence. I enjoyed that bit quite a bit. And the fact that we find a way to bring snakes into the water with the eels, I thought was kind of fun.
That's another callback that worked, and he didn't actually say, ugh, eels, I hate eels, or why did it have to be eels?
Yeah, right. Yeah. But it was fun.
It was enough. Last is a small role for me, which was Toby Jones.
Yeah, I enjoy seeing him and Harrison Ford working together actually made total sense to me as archaeologist friends, and Indy is the one who does the little more aggressive work while Basil is the one who's off hiding in the trees waiting for him to come back out. I just enjoyed all that quite a bit.
Yeah, me too.
And Toby Jones is always great.
He's superlative. What else you got? What else is hot on your list of notes?
I mean, it is a fun film. I enjoy the characters. I enjoy the world that they're crafting. I was torn. Are they going to bring Mutt back? What are they going to do with him? The fact that they wrote him out as somebody who wanted to go join the war. I mean, he would have been 31 at the time of his death in the Vietnam War. It was an interesting way to write the character out. I think Mutt was a character a lot of people struggled with, and the fact that they wrote him out, at first I kind of chuckled at it. I'm like, of course they had to write him out. But the fact that he ended up dying in the war over in Vietnam, I think actually allowed for that, the character moment that we end up having, the kind of the breakup and then that final moment between Indy and Marion. And so it was one of those moments that I was like, okay, but I think it worked.
Yes, I agree. I do think I laughed with you the fact that they wrote him out and killed him. That felt like pushing the shiv in a little bit far.
Yeah, right.
I would have bought it had he just not been in the movie. They could have literally not mentioned him, and I wouldn't have given it any other thought. But the fact that they brought him up and killed him is good.
It was great.
So,
yeah, very funny. John Williams is back doing the music. I think it's strong. I think it's an enjoyable film. I'll watch it again.
You know what? If I get anything out of this movie, hearing you say that is the thing that's going to let me sleep better tonight.
Yeah.
My rating, you'll be surprised, maybe. I think my rating went up.
Oh, well, I guess we'll have to wait and see. I guess with that, we'll be right back, but first our credits.
The Next Reel is a production of True Story FM, engineering by Andy Nelson, music by Vyacheslav Dragunov, Lance Conrad, Angel Salazar, Oriel Novella, and Eli Catlin. Andy usually finds all the stats for the awards and numbers at the-numbers.com, boxofficemojo.com, imdb.com, and wikipedia.org. Find the show at truestory.fm, and if your podcast app allows ratings and reviews, please consider doing that for our show.
Growing up in the 70s and 80s, movies were an important presence in my life. I remember gathering around the television with my family every holiday season, eagerly awaiting the annual broadcasts of The Wizard of Oz and The Sound of Music. There's always Christmas, Thanksgiving, one of those. Those shared experiences not only instilled in me a deep love for the magic of cinema, but also sparked the joy I found in watching movies with my family and friends and discussing them afterwards. But it was seeing Star Wars in the theater that truly ignited my passion. I was captivated by the epic storytelling, the groundbreaking special effects, and the sense of adventure that seemed to leap off the screen. That feeling only intensified when I later watched Raiders of the Lost Ark on VHS at my friend Matt's house. These films opened my eyes to the power of movies to transport us to other worlds. As I grew older, I spent countless hours at our local Blockbuster, poring over the shelves, mesmerized by the enticing cover art. I would often rent movies based solely on how intriguing the box looked, leading me to discover hidden gems and cinematic oddities like Squirm, The Stuff, and Pumpkinhead. There was something thrilling about taking a chance on an unknown film and being pleasantly surprised by what I found. It's that sense of discovery that I've tried to bring to the Next Reel Film Podcast, and the same, I think, goes for Pete. Each week, we dive into a different movie, sharing our thoughts and insights. Some of my favorite discussions have centered around films that were completely new to me, like The Secret in Their Eyes, Kill List, Les Samurai, Talk Radio, Outside In, 13, Time Crimes. The list goes on and on. I hadn't seen these movies before. I didn't own them. These were movies I rented or streamed specifically for this show, and I'm so glad I did. Not only did I get to experience these incredible stories, but I also had the opportunity to share them with our listeners. And that brings me to our watch page at thenextreel.com/watch. If you visit our watch page, you'll find an extensive list of all the movies we've covered, not just on their Next Reel, but also on some of our other podcasts like The Film Board, Movies We Like, and even retired shows like Trailer Rewind and Silver Linings. We're also working on adding listings for CinemaScope and Sitting in the Dark. For each movie, we've provided convenient links to both Amazon and Apple, making it easy for you to rent or purchase the films you're interested in. Whether you're looking to catch up on a movie you missed or watch along with us for an upcoming episode of a new season, our watch page has you covered. But here's the best part. When you use the links at thenextreel.com/watch, it helps support the podcast and no extra cost to you. Those small commissions add up and allow us to keep doing what we love, exploring the world of cinema and sharing our discoveries with all of you. In a way, our watch page is like those old video store shelves filled with countless titles just waiting to be discovered. And when you rent or buy a movie through our link, sit down with your family and friends and hit play, it's like we're right there with you, sharing in the excitement of a new cinematic adventure. So next time you're in the mood for a great movie, head over to thenextreel.com/watch. Not only will you find a wealth of incredible films to choose from, but you'll also be supporting the podcast and helping to create new movie memories, just like the ones I cherished from my childhood. Whether watching with family, friends, or just by yourself, movies have a way of bringing us together and enriching our lives. That's the power of cinema, and that's what we celebrate every week on The Next Reel. Happy watching, and we'll see you at The Next Reel.
Andy, it's sequels and remakes time. I think we're done, right? Please tell me you don't have news.
You know, Bob Iger, Disney's CEO, did say the future of the franchise with Harrison Ford was unknown, which is funny because Harrison Ford is like, no. So, but that's Harrison Ford for you, I guess. But he said that at least this film would not be the final installment. So who knows? In 2022, Kathleen Kennedy, she said Ford would not be recast. Ford also said it's his last film in the series. Then in November that year, Disney said that they're considering multiple options to continue the franchise, including some TV shows or films for Disney+. March 2023, Lucasfilm, they said they canceled all the films and TV shows because they just wanted to focus on Star Wars. I guess they're still possibly thinking that they may continue the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles in some way. But at this point, because they're focusing on Star Wars, Indiana Jones is off the table.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
Let's just be okay with that. Everybody back away from your emails. Kathleen, don't send any more emails about Indiana Jones. Just be done. All right. How to do at award season?
It was okay.
Best de-aging? Did it win Best de-aging? Is that an award yet?
7 wins with 33 other nominations. John Williams, as it seems to be per usual with this franchise, he was nominated for Best Original Score, but lost to Ludwig Göransson's score for Oppenheimer. At the Saturn Awards, it won for Best Fantasy Film, Harrison Ford won Best Actor, and John Williams won Best Music. Mickelson was nominated for Best Supporting Actor, but lost to Nicolas Cage in Renfield. Phoebe Waller-Bridge was nominated for Supporting Actress, but lost to Emily Blunt in Oppenheimer. Mangold was nominated for Best Director, but lost to Avatar: Way of Water, which also beat it for visual and special effects. It lost Best Editing to Oppenheimer, and it lost Best Costumes to Barbie. At the Razzies, got to throw those in every once in a while. It was nominated for 2 awards. They said Indiana Jones and the Dial of Still Beating a Dead Horse was nominated for Worst Prequel, Ripoff, Remake, or Sequel, but lost to Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey. And Indiana Jones and the Dial of Can I Go Home Now was nominated for Worst Screenplay, but lost to Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey. Actually, Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey won, quote, all of its 5 Razzies that it was nominated for. Last but not least, the Toros World Stunt Awards. This film won for Best Specialty Stunt. This was 3 stunt performers chase each other down the dressed, quote, main street of Glasgow, meant to look like New York. All aspects of the sequence were performed with no CGI enhancement. 2 performers ride downstairs into an underground subway station set. They weave in and out of background artists at high speed with a confined set. The horse and rider jump off the platform and the motorcycle crashes. Finally, the rider jumps the horse onto the train platform, rides onto the tracks toward and away from trains. It actually did all that, I guess no CGI enhancement, other than things like putting Harrison's face on the guy and stuff.
Yeah.
Won for that, and then also nominated for Best Stunt Coordinator and or Second Unit Director, but lost to John Wick Chapter 4.
I probably would stand by all of those awards.
I was actually surprised to see John Wick Chapter 4 didn't have a nomination in the Best Specialty Stunt category.
For sure. How to do at the box office?
Well, for Mangold's entry into Spielberg's and Lucas's world, he had a big budget, but just how big is typical Hollywood reporting? I don't know. Disney said they spent $294.7 million. Other figures later released said over $300 million and $387.2 million. But which is it? I don't know. I'm going to go with the biggest budget I found over at the numbers of $402.3 million, thinking maybe that's closest as it takes in all prints and advertising and the worldwide ad budget. Who knows? That would be $414.3 million in today's dollars. The movie opened June 20th, 2023, opposite Sound of Freedom, Ruby Gillman, Teenage Kraken, and the limited 60th anniversary re-release of Contempt. This landed in first place and stayed in the top 10 for 6 weeks, but it didn't last in theaters more than 11 weeks. Ah, those COVID times. All told, the movie went on to earn $174.5 million domestically and $209.5 million internationally for a total gross of $395.5 million in today's dollars. What that means is if I go with the biggest of the budgets, this film landed with an adjusted loss per finished minute of $122,000. And who knows? It's entirely possible. It's also possible there are some squiffy numbers out there. Squiffy is kind of my new word lately, by the way.
It is. It feels good.
So that Disney could report a loss. Not the first time that would have happened. Anyway, I'd like to think the film still made its money back, even if just a small bit.
One of these days, I want to get a perfect break even. There has to be an award. Right? When it's just a dash. The column is just a dash.
Just right. Yeah. We've had some that were close. We have had some that were close. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm really glad we had an excuse to talk about this movie, to use Indy to kick off the new season. And it's a short series, but I'm glad we were able to do it.
Yeah, filling in, closing the gap on a past season. So it's a film I do enjoy. I did enjoy my time returning to it for the purposes of this. And inevitably, I'll probably have fun when I watch it again and maybe be a little more easy on it.
All right.
All right, we'll be right back for our ratings. But first, here is the trailer for next week's movie, kicking off our One and Done series, Herc Harvey's 1962 film, Carnival of Souls.
Good luck, Mary. Stop by and see us the next time you're in.
Thank you, but I'm never coming back.
I don't know about that girl.
How do you mean?
Day before yesterday, she was the only one of 3 girls to survive an accident. You'd think she'd feel a little something. Maybe in her place, I'd do the same thing. Just pick up life again. But I still say she's behaving strangely.
I have no desire for the close company of other people.
My dear, You cannot live in isolation from the human race, you know.
Who's the man in the hall?
Maybe you heard the boards pop or something.
I didn't hear him, Mrs. Thomas.
I saw him.
There's nobody there. He's been following me, that's all there is to it.
That old pavilion out by the lake. Somehow you associate it with all this, don't you?
There was someone else there. That strange man was there.
Hysteria won't solve anything. Now control yourself.
You think I imagined all of it, don't you? You think I'm insane?
I didn't say that. I don't mean that.
That's just what I need. Get mixed up with some girls off a rocker.
I don't want to be left alone.
Well, if she's got a problem, it'll go right along with her.
Letterboxd, Andy, letterboxd.com/the next reel for our HQ page. What are you going to do for this bad boy?
I do enjoy the film. I don't love the film. I've had a mix of ratings of this. I think 3 stars and a heart is where I'm going to go. I think it's fun. I still just, it's not my favorite, but I do enjoy elements of it.
I have been 3 stars and a heart all along. I'm actually going to go up to 4 on this one. I'm going to be the counter review. I'm going to be the one who tries to bring it up for everybody.
You're James Mangold's dad audience.
I am. I'm James Mangold's dad audience. I'm here for it. I know that people will disagree, but I'm here for de-aged indie. It's fine.
Fantastic. Well, you can find me over at Letterboxd at Soda Creek Film. You can find Pete at Pete Wright, and you can find the show at The Next Reel, where this will come in at 3.5 stars and a heart. So what did you think about Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny? We would love to know. Hop into the Show Talk channel over in our Discord community, where we will be talking about the movie this week.
When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
Letterboxd giveth, Andrew.
As Letterboxd always doeth.
I'm going to go with a family review.
Oh, okay.
This review is a 2-star, and it comes from Brian B. Everybody who sung for this movie, I hope you were either effing with me or grading on a nostalgic, indefensible curve, because this does not look like a real movie and lacks action verve. The fact that it dies when it's time for action set pieces, as opposed to otherwise competent but heavy-handed thematic point scenes, is a major blot on its ambitions to be in this franchise. At least Phoebe Waller-Bridge is okay doing an impossible part. This is almost the X-Men Origins Wolverine of our times.
Jeez.
That is a sting.
That is.
Well written.
Oh, my goodness. Well, I ended up with 2 very short ones. One is low and one is high. I just thought it'd be fun to look at both. First, the half star by Max Bolton, who in some way it's kind of a positive writing. Best one since Crystal Skull. And the last one is just kind of sweet. 5 stars by Joe Fox. I bought an Indiana Jones hat specifically to wear to this movie, and I wear it all the time now. It is a terrific hat. As a hat fan, Joe, I feel you, brother.
Oh, that's outstanding. From hat fan lovers everywhere. Oh, if you love hat fans, hat lovers. You don't have to be a lover of hat fans. Right. Although I'm sure you're very nice. All right.
Yes.
Thanks, Letterboxd.